it's not like anybody has been trying to make life difficult for people. I mean, a lot of paths and traditions and teachers assume that they've got to upset the apple cart of that pesky ego to get people not to be all up in their heads and their minds and so on. And our orientation is people are naturally gravitating into their own evolutionary potential. And there comes a point, which we affectionately call the rot. What was working doesn't work anymore.
There was that intuition of feeling like there's something more that I'm not accessing, even though I was so eclectic in my seeking and my learning and speeches that I would attend and these kinds of things and practices. In my gut, I would call it the void in my belly.
Samuel Bonder and Linda Gross Bonder have developed relational, profoundly embodied breakthrough approach to a spiritual enlightenment that's readily accessible by great numbers of ordinary people. For over 3 decades, as pioneering coaches of this embodied awakening through their human sun heart work, they've taken enlightenment from remote temples and Olympic athletes of spiritual practice, evolved it into a humane, ethical realization, and conveyed it into the towns, households, and workplaces of everyday people globally. It is so nice to be in the company of Samuel and Linda. And my first question to you, because you're so involved with what a lot of people need right now, and that is getting in touch with who they really are. And so when you speak with a student, or you just speak anytime, do you have the ability to sort of reach that person more at the soul and spirit level instead of just a normal everyday, the way people are running through their lives or running over their lives is what I've heard?
Great question. My immediate impulse to answer that question is that the spirit and the soul nature is not separate from the human being, divinely human being, and what we're going through day by day. Now, when we're going through difficult stuff, it's difficult to access sometimes that spirit or that ground of being, as we would call it, consciousness itself, the place in ourselves that's not affected by the things in our lives. It's hard to access that when you're up against it, right? But we don't want to as much separate out from spirit or soul nature or divinity from the humanness. So that's what I would answer. And we do cover, when we're working and coaching with people, the difficult things that they're going through and help them focus and access that other place in their being that is much more grounded.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I would add to that. It's our blessing, and I like to say an undeservable grace. I mean, you can't do enough to deserve such a gift. And at the same time, it's a gift that's the birthright of everyone, which is to see and feel that living spirit nature that is, we could say, the ocean of all that is, and to see the unique soul of each one, and to be able to see or feel as a simple kind of intuition, but it's a cellular one, that there isn't really a fundamental difference, as Linda was just saying. So part of the way it works then for us is that people may be feeling concerned or stressed about being kind of stuck in their ego. But a lot of our work is meeting them right where they're stuck and being able to help them relax into holding that part of themselves.
Right.
And that, along with the energy and the presence of the whole process, our kind of motto is the sun, S-U-N, in your heart is rising. which is metaphorical about something very biospiritually real, and that is that this greater nature is coming alive and awake naturally in all of us. And our view is it's actually forcing all the purifications and stresses and so forth. There's an intensification going on. So we're able to meet people where they are and sometimes feel stuck. And in the course of the interchange that goes on, help them to become confident in their own access to that greater being.
And to know that they're not doing anything wrong.
Exactly.
For falling into a despair or a difficulty. That we have to use a term that we use a lot, green light, even that, allow that to wash over you, through you, and around you, and then out of you, if you will. And there are lots of different methods that we help people access and practice to, really get that going in their being.
Do you find that there is a whole shift in human consciousness right now that's taking place? When we're leaving the age of Aquarius and coming into the Piscean age, I mean, there's going to be a whole washover period. But do you find that during this time that people are becoming more in touch with themselves, that they've sort of forgotten about along the way? I know myself, when I was busy raising my kids and running and doing all this stuff, I never for a moment thought about my soul or my spirit and getting in touch at a level that I'm at right now with the true essence of who I am. That I'm just wondering, I think that things are speeding up where people are getting in touch more or quicker than they used to. Do you find that? Do you find that?
Yeah, definitely. It's got an upside and a downside to it, in the sense that there's a great quickening. It's also forcing a lot of what we might call purification, both at the personal and at the collective levels. And we have that on display in our politics and our relationship to the biosphere, the environment, and so forth. But even in the years that we've been doing our work, the speeding up is quite dramatically noticeable.
Yeah.
When we began, and we were among the early people living and talking about an quote unquote embodiment process.
Yes.
And in the spiritual scene, a lot of people were still very much into getting access to a pure transcendental essence that's free of any embroilment in all the stuff of daily living, and it's kind of pure. And also, however, from a more embodied point of view, kind of dissociated. And that's changed dramatically. I mean, embodiment is the great byword these days. And more people are finding their way to it. I mean, interestingly, nowadays, celebrities, you name it, matter of factly saying, well, in my meditation, blank, 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 blank. And back not so long ago, nobody had hardly ever heard of meditation.
No, I know.
And so many people are now either spiritual, not religious, or spiritual and religious, but definitely strongly spiritual. So that's the positive. The challenging part to me, looking at it, is when we started, I was like, wow, is this going to be a wildfire that just rushes through humanity? And in the long reach of time, it might very well be, but that transition between ages, the washover time could go on for a very long.
Oh yes, it could go on for a couple hundred more years.
Potentially even a lot more.
Yes.
So
So when you say embodiment, are you talking about the embodiment of the soul, the embodiment of the spirit? when you say embodiment?
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. Embodiment of all parts, the soul nature, the emotional being, the absolute conscious nature that we are, our hearts. We talk about living and being in the heart itself and being able to embrace all parts. And so, yes, you're embodying all of these places. And as best you can with the work that we do with people, we draw their attention to all of these places within their being and
Yes.
in their personhood. Even the places that are difficult to deal with when you're feeling down. We have a course called Maximizing Joy that is helping people access much more the place in themselves that can take charge in bringing in practice or discipline if they need to or not. A lot of times people are so steeped in practice and discipline that they forget to actually sit back and take a breath and enjoy nature or their animals or their family. And that's all part of embodiment. That's all part of being here as a fully divinely human being. Also bringing attention to the energetics that arise within the physical body itself. A lot of times people will point to their hearts when they're talking about particular things. We talk about taking a deep breath and actually feeling those energies and breathing that deep breath all the way down to the tips of your toes. And so, yes, embodiment of all parts, all places within ourselves.
Yeah, and there's a kind of a sort of cosmic joke to this. I mean, I can imagine our cats sort of scratching their heads, looking at us and saying, well, wait a minute. I mean, obviously you're a body, so what's all the embodiment talk? And it points to, we feel, actually a positive, necessary development in humanity's evolution as a species, where we've, in effect, come into a kind of a disembodied, brain mind based seat of self or identity.
Mhm.
And so our work has been best known as waking down in mutuality, in relationship. And so there's a coming down into a fuller sense of our embodiment here. And people speak about it, people we've worked with over the years. As that process achieves a kind of clarity for them, they'll speak about it very simply. They'll say things like, wow, I'm here like I've never been here before. And the I of me includes that greater, my soul and that greater spiritual nature that we all share. And then there's all the learning of how to live as such a being, because it can be challenging.
I love that you brought in the word mutuality. That is such a huge thing in our connections to things and others, of all others, sentient beings, animals, plant life, mutuality within yourself. And I got to say, Rhonda, we didn't jump in earlier to
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us on your program one more time. The last time was so rich and wonderful for us. And speaking of mutuality, I just feel your heart when I connect with you, and it's just makes me feel so much joy, and just being here with you is a blessing. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. And that's what I'm feeling from you too. I mean, I feel my heart when I'm with the both of you, because you come from a place of such purity of spirit and the work that you do. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We deeply appreciate you and your commitment and receptivity and depth and presence. Your transmission of that presence is lovely.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm actually feel that I'm blushing a little bit. Yeah, and so the igniting of the spirit is really dear to me because, and I think of my life, and I don't think it's any different than anybody else's, where you, and again, I'll say you're sort of running through your life, and all of a sudden something might happen. And for me, it was a car accident that
Yes.
well, they took me to the hospital, but I literally walked away from it. But it changed me. And that accident, and then what I did is I wrote a book and I said, okay, well, that's it. That's the accident. My spirit has sort of shifted me on this different path now. And I thought, okay, well, it's my book that I've been wanting to write. So then I wrote my book, but it wasn't the book, it was a podcast. And now I'm on this quest that I think is really things aligned for you to keep you on your path with raising human consciousness. And that's
Mm.
and so now my podcast is called The Nature of Consciousness because I've been so curious about it and also curious about my past and what I went through and the steps that I took. And it's not uncommon, I've heard, that people, this happens to them, that we've come here for a reason. And sometimes people remember what they've come here before. They remember what they've come here for. But others, like me, I had no idea. And so I listened to that
Mhm.
part of me that sort of gave me direction. So do you find that when people arrive metaphorically on your doorstep, that they have now reached that point where they're open enough that they want to learn what you have to offer them?
Yes, yes. There is a readiness with individuals
Yes.
and for individuals for
Uh-huh.
any path or religion or expression in the world. There is a readiness that comes in for each person, and it's so, so different for each person. We always
Mhm.
like to say that our work is not cookie cutter, where everybody comes in and they're in the same place or they're needing the same kind of practices or whatever.
Yeah,
It's so unique to the individual. And when
beautiful.
someone gravitates toward waking down in mutuality and our Human Sun Institute, a lot of times they have gone the gamut with all kinds of spiritual seeking, perhaps even transcendental forms of awakening, some of which have had profound awakenings through these wonderful, venerable traditions. And yet there might be a place in them that feels like they haven't dropped into their bodies and into their hearts and into relationships. That is a real key quite often here in our work, is that people intuit there's something more than just living as and in consciousness or being, if you will, that they want to embody, once again, embody all aspects of being divinely human here on the planet.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting with our work in particular, Rhonda, because to be able to go into that deeper process, it necessitates, as it turns out. I mean, from when I started the whole thing, and Linda joined me fairly quickly and became an awakened teacher herself. Um, it's not like anybody has been trying to make life difficult for people. I mean, a lot of paths and traditions and teachers assume that they've got to upset the apple cart of that pesky ego to get people not to be all up in their heads and their minds and so on. And our orientation is people are naturally gravitating into their own evolutionary potential.
Mm-hmm.
And there comes a point, which we affectionately call the rot, where what was working doesn't work anymore. And life may be going along fairly well. When Linda was going through this, she could check off all the boxes of a good
Yeah,
life.
life was great.
But
But
Go ahead.
yeah, there was that, once again, there was that intuition of feeling like there's something more that I'm not accessing, even though I was so eclectic in my seeking and my learning and speeches that I would attend and these kinds of things and practices. In my gut, I would call it the void in my belly. I just felt like something needs to be filled, and I have no idea what that is. But I know that it's going to inform me in a way that is going to motivate me and catalyze me into more service, more being with beings, more help, if you will. And that quite often happens for individuals that come. That being said, I also want to bring in the fact that some people gravitate toward us, and it's not even really about awakening itself. It's not about um, realizing consciousness as form, as every part of who you are. It could very well be as simple as I just need a healthy ear. I need some guidance. I need some coaching as to what my next step is in my life and in my relationships. And that's really important to bring in here. Because what happens quite often, Rhonda, is that we discover when we connect, even with people who say, I don't even know what awakening is. I just want to feel more whole. I want to feel more myself.
Yes.
Quite often, as they continue to listen and to do the things that work for them and discern what's really singing to their hearts, I like to say, then they start to shift and change their perspectives, and their awareness shifts and changes, and they're much more capable to direct attention to these shifts and changes and honor them. And we draw that to their attentions by saying, right there. Did you see what you just said and felt? And then they go, oh, yeah, and then it solidifies it even more.
Mm-hmm.
I just said a whole bunch of stuff, so I hope that's okay.
Yeah, I love it. I love what you're talking about because, people might not know that it is a process and it's a gentle process. I mean, you know what I mean? Like people sometimes are afraid to seek. They know there's more, but they really don't know the direction they're supposed to go in. I mean, for a long time, I would talk to a lot of people and they knew nothing. And I was searching and I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? You don't know anything? Because we think that ministers and, people that are educated and all of those things in spirituality or religion are able to answer these questions, but they can if it comes to opening a book, I found. But also, I found that it was hard to get on my path. And it's not that I didn't try, but I didn't know that I could find it within myself. I thought I had to go out and get it from someone in order to to know what I was to do next. So there's that part of it as well, is that when you don't know, you need somebody to sort of guide you on that path until you get to a point where you're embodying it, as you said, you're embodying your soul and you're starting to listen and pay attention. Does that make sense at all?
Oh, it's perfect sense. So well put, Rhonda. Thank you. Yes, it is an evolutionary process where,
Uh-huh.
as you're drawing attention to their attention, any practitioner, any person, when they're capable and able and available of opening up that kind of discernment and listening deeply to others and also to themselves,
Mhm.
that's when those shifts can change and really dramatically move them in a direction that is right for them. So thank you for saying it the way that you did.
Mhm. Thank you. And so, you know, I heard Waking Down the last time we were talking,
Yeah.
and I've heard you talk about that a couple of times. I've heard the name a couple of times while we've been talking. And, usually people say enlightenment or waking up. And these words, some people don't even know what they mean. But waking down to me has such a grounding effect. Can you
Yeah.
speak more about that?
Yeah,
Thank you.
we could go on at quite some length. So Linda will give me a tap if I.
No, I mean, he's the one that coined this phrase, decades ago. And you were a
Yeah.
pioneer in embodiment, my love.
Oh, for sure.
So much in the early days when embodiment wasn't even really talked about that much in spirituality.
Yeah. So there are a number of ways we can approach this.
Yes.
And I think I want to do honor to some of the depth of it that may not be familiar to some of your listeners or people taking this in. And I hope it'll be helpful.
Yeah. So, yes.
But a lot of, as you say, a lot of spirituality has been about waking up.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, enlightenment is identified with some kind of transition out of this messy, karmic, sinful, you can put all the names on it, local, constricted self that's out of touch. And so this has been, I want to emphasize, an honorable evolutionary stage, a necessity in our journey for so many to access that upness. But a lot of profound depth spirituality became identified with that. And what's been happening over the last at least 150 years or so, but now crystallizing more and more for so many people, is this landing in ourselves. Linda has a great phrase that she mentions in the intro to our Maximizing Joy presentations. She said that the cells celebrate. And that is indeed what happens. Well, the part of the mystery here is that I use the word yogis without necessarily speaking of people in Eastern spiritual traditions, but people who are working a path toward some deeper unity or more profound transcendence. They identified over many centuries and millennia this pathway up. And what has begun to happen is that spirit itself is falling down and in. And that's what happened to me. Without going into a whole lot of detail, there was this falling into this deeper place in my heart that I had known about. I mean, this happened in 1992. I had been in touch with its possibility for more than 20 years and working toward it. And when that occurred, it was natural to begin speaking of, yeah, I understand this whole principle and process of waking up. I honor it.
Yes.
But I have a sense that spirit itself is evolving. One of my early mentors, as I was awakening, said to me, spirituality is not just evolutionary, it is itself evolving. And so there's a passageway down into ourselves, and you don't necessarily feel a particular chakra or center or anything necessarily in the heart. Most people have some sense of it, but there is just this discovery that spirit isn't only up, it's here, and it is pervading everything. It's being, animating everything. So I hope that's helpful.
Beautiful.
Well, it's very helpful. And I think that for most people, the going up might be a natural thing to do because that's what people think of, as you said, enlightenment, going, it's sort of like an upward movement. But when you really, I think, come into yourself is when you find your heart and you find the vibration in your heart and the bigness of your heart and the love that's there that is compared to holding an infant for the first time or just holding an infant. just, and you don't have to try. It's just there. It's just the beauty of life is there. And so I found, and you may be able to speak better to this than I, is that when I went in, that's when I was really able to self-actualize in a way that I had never had before. And it didn't matter what it was. Whatever I touched just seemed to work out for me.
Mm.
Mm.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and those kinds of passages can come and typically do for most people at one point or another. Uh, and of course, then, in the natural cycle of changes, challenges arise and difficulties.
Yes.
That's all part of the deal.
It's all part of the testing,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
testing and tempering and refinement. Yeah.
Yes, and tempering and refining for yourselves, it would be as teachers, right? And so you're tested because all walks of life come across your threshold. And you have to know so much more than your programs in order to work and communicate with those people that come to you, right?
Yes.
And so your challenges become still a guidepost to help other people.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, being educated and feeling and knowing knowing, some other paths and traditions that people have come from.
Right.
And
Yes.
Neil mentioned earlier, some of those traditions and the practices and disciplines fall away or rot away, to use our term. And then something new is coming in, but they may not know what the something new is. And so the way that we hold people and listen to people and inform ourselves about each individual and perhaps sometimes groups is that we want to understand the logic of their beings. I love that phrase because everybody has a different logic. Everyone has a different history and background that they've come from. And so to be able to ask questions, sit deeply in your heart with these individuals, and honor the fact that they are so uniquely them and they've come from whatever past and experiences that they've had that has informed them to the very moment that they're speaking to us as a couple, as a coaching couple or individually, because Samuel and I both do individual sessions as well.
Okay.
So the key is to really listen deeply with your heart, not just your ears, not just to understand what they're talking about, but to allow yourself to feel and drop into the resonance and the radiance of that heart, of that being, of that person, and what they're expressing. We talk a lot about transmission. So, what I'm speaking to is kind of addressing a bit of that radiance that we feel from people, Like we honored you today, which I love being with you because I do feel your heart and your radiance and your transmission of your presence here. And that is such a key to the connection that we have in our coaching work and in our teaching and all of this. And so it's very important to bring that piece in.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate how you put that. And we've struggled over the years because that term transmission, once you get past, you're not talking about a car, are you?
Yeah. Yes.
So, you can get past that pretty quickly, but then there's an assumption that it's limited to an energy or a force or a presence that comes from one person to the other. And one of the ways we've recently started to speak of it is there can be that. You can feel a presence, and that's fine.
Yes.
That's part of it. People don't necessarily have to feel that, and that's really important to say too.
Yeah.
Because some people don't, and then they're like, fear of missing out and all that. But a better or a more complete way, or more inclusive language would also be something like an intersubjective signal gets activated between us so that, quote unquote, I can hardly use that phrase, my transmission, that great heart nature radiating in and as and through me resonates tuning fork style with that same principle that is also there in you, in each person, but maybe not yet self-aware. And so that greater nature becomes more and more self-aware. And the communion of mutual transmission and reception, we could say, is central to the work. And it goes right along with what Linda was saying, that when we're encountering people, we're seeing and feeling that nature coming alive and awake, even if they don't have a clue that that's happening. And so whatever they're going through, and so much of spirituality that's been about getting up and out is warning people about desires, reactions, attachments, aversions, thinking, ego, even the very sense of being an ego. And in our orientation, respecting those traditions, but we've been finding that doesn't necessarily obtain anymore. So when people come, instead of, if someone comes and they're just ground up in a relationship, say with their intimate partner or their child, adult children are as likely to have this happen for people as younger ones. Instead of saying to them, well, no, you've got to get over that, you need to meditate and be free of that so that then you can observe it better and so forth. And that can be part of the process. But at a deeper and more mutually empowering level, we say to them, well, let's stay right there. This is you, your greater nature, coming alive and awake and being more sensitive than ever before to these issues, these problems. They're not the problem, they're the path. And to be able to stay with them while there's this mutual reception and transmission. Again, I used that phrase earlier. People develop this confidence in their own being that gets stronger and stronger in them.
So when you say you're not the problem, you are the path. So are you talking to normally what people come to you with a problem, and then you're helping them see that what they're thinking about and what they're believing about is really what's going to help them on the path that they're going through, but they are, because sometimes we can get too busy with our thoughts and then we make the thoughts bigger and bigger, and now we've become the problem, we think, right? Is that what we're talking about? I'm just trying to get some clarification. Yeah. For myself.
Sure. Well, let's say someone has a particular problem or a habit of reactivity. There's all kinds of work that can be done to be
right. Yes. Okay.
And by the way, we heartily encourage people to make use of therapy of various kinds, typically more body-based, as an adjunct to this process. In our approach, we don't say to them, well, yeah, you have to learn how to transcend that reactivity. We say to them, okay, let's just be with that. This is you. This is, again, why is this problematic for you? Because you're increasingly sensitive to this. So let's see what's cooking there. And let's not assume that being reactive somehow disqualifies you from being spiritual.
Great stuff. Yeah. That's what I wanted to hone in on. If that's what you were talking about, is to honor people's feelings about what they're having and working with that instead of wanting to just set it over here again, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because once you set it over there, it's going to loop back around.
Yeah, and bigger.
Yeah.
Whatever you resist persists.
Yes, yes.
What's that, Samuel?
Whatever you resist persists.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so
it can.
Love your approach.
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and Linda actually came up with spontaneously, she may tell the story of how it happened right now, but this wonderful, exceedingly simple, and incredibly profound, we named it 6-step recognition yoga.
Yes.
And the 6 steps are with respect to, it could be something positive, but often it's something you're struggling with.
Yeah.
See it, feel it. And those are the first 2 steps. But then the next 2 are really radical. Live it and be it, rather than try to transcend it. Merely observe it from a safe distance. Surrender it to the guru or to God. And those are all venerable paths, practices. But in this context, living it and being it is a daring. You think living it and being it is going to be the worst mistake you can make, especially if you've been trained that way. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, well, what happens is those are the 4 steps, and the living and being goes so closely hand in hand that the living of it is being able to animate it. You know, if it's an issue with someone, go to them in mutuality and address the issue. If it's something that you've been struggling over and over again for a long time, find ways and means to allow yourself to bring it into life. You know, write about it, journal it, beat a pillow, get in your car and scream if need be, right? Just get it in the body and out of the body. And then when you really, really can access that place of processing, per se, you drop into really feeling it on a different level. So you see the problem, you identify it, you feel it, but not just feel it, you know, like, okay, I feel an emotion. You'll just allow yourself to feel it, then live it, be it. And when you're dropping into the being of it, what happens is this 5th step is transcending it in place. And what that means is you transcend the effect of the problem. You transcend the effect of the issue that has had a chokehold on you. All of a sudden, you feel the chokehold releasing, and you're able to take a deeper, deeper breath. And then the 6th step, which Samuel actually added, which goes along with the living, is speak it all along the way at appropriate moments. So see it, feel it, live it, be it, transcend it in place, and speak it. People do this quite organically and naturally so much of the time in our session work. It's really amazing how people drop into that recognition process, and they'll even say, gosh, you know, I've been having this problem, this conflict with this person or whatever it might be, but I feel different about it now. And we'll say, oh, how so? You know, tell us how you feel, and how does it feel emotionally? How does your body feel when you're considering it? And as they're speaking, I'll quite often, and Samuel too, will say, you just did 6-step recognition yoga right there. The effect is no longer controlling you. You have so much more ground in your heart to be with it. It's not that poof, it goes away. It just has you have a different reaction and relationship to it. You have a guided meditation with this particular process. There's lots of guided meditations we have. Another one is the golden liquid nectar of conscious love trust.
Wow.
That's one that
Speak
I
about
love.
that. Speak
I
about
love.
that.
Oh, sure. I love doing that one with people. That once again was spontaneously revealed to me in a session with a man who was really, really having trouble feeling his body, going into the heart and allowing himself to drop there. And so I just spontaneously had him close his eyes. We did some breath work, and I drew his attention to the body and the breath and where it's being circulated. And then I brought in a visualization called the golden liquid nectar. And the golden liquid nectar seeps down and around and all through the body. So it's a really strong visualization process, but it's so effective. And then what I do is I draw their attention to the heart itself, because the heart radiates in such a love capacity that it can burn through a lot of difficult energies that we feel emotionally and that physically we can actually feel. So having that visualization of that golden liquid nectar just enveloping the heart itself and vibrating and swirling. Yeah, it's such a rich process. He totally felt it after we did it.
Yes.
It was.
I love the movement part of it with it as well. Beautifully said, Linda.
Just to say
Thank
one
you.
other quick thing
Thank
about
you.
that. It's
Yeah.
funny, I happened to be writing about this morning for email mailing we're sending out. But the golden liquid nectar is not merely a metaphor.
Mm.
So they tend nowadays, with all that focus on brain chemistry, they tend to talk about it as if all this was only happening in the brain. But in fact, the feel-good chemistry, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, etc., it's circulating in the whole organism.
Yes.
And what we can do through processes like that one is really, in effect, turn the faucets on high and be able to have that enjoyment. Another guided meditation I came up with years ago is particularly during the Christmas season, it makes a lot of sense. But any old time, it's I forgot how the name is escaping me at the moment, but it's essentially turning on the lights of the whole body as if you were a human Christmas tree. And in a similar way, it's a natural way of intensifying the positive feelings, the enjoyment part of this. So the work is not merely about learning how to be with the bad stuff, quote unquote. It's also giving yourself permission to really enjoy the good stuff and to do that with others as well.
Yeah, that goes right back to me mentioning maximizing joy earlier. Goodness knows, with the world condition and all of this stuff happening right now all around the planet, we need more joy. We need more accessing that place, not only in ourselves, but with and for others, to bolster that energy and that heart love that goes out to all beings, all creation. We need more of that. And it's not a bypassing from difficult stuff. It's not a practice that you have to willfully do. I mean, we interviewed 8 amazing different people for this course who are themselves experts in the field of all kinds of things, neuro nets for the brain and yoga. I mean, I could go on and on. But anyway, maximizing joy is so crucially important right now for people to find much more of the ability in themselves to just sit back and take a breath, even when it's difficult. Remember to breathe.
And to, without resisting, avoiding, escaping, trying to fix, etc., to be able to shine through whatever's happening. If you're sensitive, going through some kind of awakening doesn't immunize you from the real human pains and struggles, and some of them can be very, kind of humiliating on some level to go through.
Yeah.
So that too is part of the process, but the more confident you become in that deeper nature, being self-aware, the more you give life permission to have all of its twists and turns, and you find your way. You get tested, tempered, and refined, as we said earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Robert Gilbert, who has just passed just last month, one of the things that he said often is that our life is a limited time opportunity.
Mm.
And, you know, and I remember living my life as if it's going to go on forever.
Mm.
And it's when you start to get older that really resonates with you. And he died quite young. And so it really resonates that this is our opportunity. This is our opportunity to remember why we've come here, to help as many as we can, and to take our light and shine it, even on the ones that you don't think that they'd feel they would be very receptive to receive it. They're the ones that need it the most. Right?
Yes.
And I just find with loving kindness,
Mhm.
especially when it comes from the heart and it's heart centered, that we can change everybody that we come in contact with. We can touch them, touch their spirit with our spirit, and
Yes.
change them. Something that you said, Samuel, that I just wanted to come back to was surrender. And it was about 10 minutes ago that you said that word. And sometimes people think that surrender means giving up, giving in, or giving away. Can you explain to our listeners what surrender can really mean for us?
Great question. And I'm not remembering the context in which I spoke it earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but one way that we like to reference this it kind of it's another way of turning things around, like the difference between waking up and waking down.
Yes.
And that is giving ourselves permission to just start to consider. I mean, instead of some radical, amazing act,
Yes.
start to consider that I'm going to use kind of religious language here, but we're pointing to that greater nature. If God really is God,
Yeah.
then what isn't God
Mm.
in our lives and our world, including ourselves? And so there's a kind of a realm of surrender that starts to open up to the possibility that instead of the story here being me as this limited being trying to reach the great all-pervading God nature, God goddess, mystery, whatever, the Tao, whatever you want to call it, what if it's at least equally valid to see that that greater nature is coming alive and awake as us? And that part of what we're having to learn to surrender to is a self-awareness that includes divine identity, that God is crystallizing in and as each and every one of us totally uniquely. That's why Linda and I, it's just not humanly possible for us to say to people, well, first you do this course and then you read this book and then we have that conversation. It's like, no, 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 no. Who are you? And so there's this surrendering into a much bigger, more beautiful, more challenging picture of ourselves. That our godness is struggling to be born and can't cut off whole parts of ourselves as if somehow they were outside the picture. I'll just close this particular response. In my first book, or second book actually, Waking Down, we got little quotations from some of the people who'd been involved in the process with us. And one was a woman who, by the way, had a lot of trauma in her life. And we want to really acknowledge trauma as a reality. And the way she described what had happened in her awakening process, she said, it's as if all the black sheep in my family have been welcomed back into the barn. there was this deeper acceptance that the God part of us makes more possible rather than requiring us to put to the side, as we were talking about earlier. So that's just one framework in which we can talk about surrender. And there's so many other ways in which a deeper acceptance of what is, that's not merely resignation.
Right.
In fact, Linda used that phrase,
green lighting,
the term green lighting earlier. And in the very earliest years of my work, even from before we met, 93 or so, and certainly when we did meet, which was in 94, I had been working with people. I would do these half-day personal, workshops with them or occasions. And I had a kind of a pattern that I went through. And at some point in it, I was saying, so there's this deeper self-acceptance. And time after time, and they'd be right there, really cooking. And then I'd talk about self-acceptance, their eyes would glaze over, their energy would go, and I don't mean in a positive, happy waking down way. And gradually it dawned on me that self-acceptance meant resignation to things never changing. So I, follow the movies and celebrities and all that. And, in movie making, there's this term green lighting.
Yes.
When the producers decide we're going to put the money into this thing, let's make it happen. And I began using that term as a way of relating in a positive, transformative expectation, way of relating to whatever is real, without, however, trying to muscle it into place. And that itself is a form of surrender. That when you're going through this recognition yoga process, living and being some of the stuff that you like least about yourself, it's hard. So it's a challenging surrender.
I love that you said muscling it into yourself. And that's what we kind of want to do is we think things are harder than they are. And the thing is with surrendering, you're just allowing. It's allowing for the feelings, allowing for the information to come through. That's when I find you become brilliant because all these ideas come to you. Right?
Yes.
And that, brilliant and altogether more radiant.
Yes. And you had that experience in big time, Rhonda. I mean, you write about it so much all through your book, all of these aha, growth moments. And yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's the thing is, the older you get, the more experience you get. I keep on saying older, but the more experience that you have with a lot of different things, it really puts distance between where you were and where you are now. And I find sometimes, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but you read something and I'm like, I don't know what they're saying. Like, I don't know what this person's saying. And then I, just keep on going through whatever material I'm going through. And then I come back and I want to just revisit it again just to see if I can get it. And I'm like, holy smokes, how did I not get that? So it's sort of like it seems difficult. Our journeys seem difficult. But however, when we go back and we visit it, we see how perfectly everything was put together for us to be who we are today. And we still have so much more and so much space yet, not to conquer, but to reside in, to live in, to feel and be and see people not as black sheep, but rather they're on their journey. And their journey really has nothing to do with our journey. If we keep on our journey and help up The people who are looking for help, that's all we really can do,
Yeah.
I think.
Yes, really
Beautiful.
true.
Yeah, and we were talking early on in our conversation with you about the rhythm and timing, of things coming in for individuals to explore.
Yes.
And I love that you brought in the fact that you can read something and not get it at all initially, but then as you drop in a little bit more and a little bit more and you reread it and you feel what you're actually taking in, that it can really, really trigger and open up a lot of aha moments. So thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah, thank you for that. And a great cultural philosopher named Jean Gebser of the mid 20th century, mostly, wrote a great book, The Ever-Present Origin. But he said, this is catalytic literature. And that's what you're describing. And people often, by the way, have that experience reading our stuff.
Yes.
They don't get it, don't get it, don't get it. And all of a sudden, oh my God.
Yeah.
Or they read something that they got and they come back to it
Yes.
and there's something else there.
Yes. The repetition is so good.
Yeah. So I want to honor the title of your podcast.
Oh, thank
To
you.
speak directly about the nature of consciousness. Can we do that for a couple minutes?
Yes, I'd love to.
So I just, in the same way that we're acknowledging that waking up can lead to waking down and so forth, people often have what I would call a kind of a stadium-like assumption about consciousness. That if they're going to have an authentic intuition of consciousness, feeling of consciousness, it's got to be a blowout, super ecstatic, no mind left, etc. experience. And those can happen and can be very important. And they've been very important in my life. I don't deny that at all. But in our approach, part of our waking down and mutuality work often, and for many people, at some point can include a very direct exploration of consciousness in however, with a much, an assumption of something simpler and more ordinary. So we just start with, instead of trying to get to some super state, we start with our, what I call blue collar everyday awareness. The awareness we have, like even when we're sitting here talking and we're paying attention to these words going back and forth and the feelings and the looking at each other, but we're all quite naturally and spontaneously aware of our bodies, the rooms, etc. And that awareness takes no effort, is continuous, it's always there. And so when we do what we call the consciousness work with people, we'll start out right there and help them begin to notice that noticing, registering, observing awareness and take it from there. And there are practices we can do to help people, again, become more confident in that nature and discover its mysteries. So I just want to honor that the exploration of the nature of consciousness is becoming itself more and more important to more and more people. And to be able to do so in ways that help you clarify consciousness itself without actively cutting yourself off from the objects of consciousness, your feelings, your thoughts, and so forth. That's a crucial piece of work, and it involves all of these elements that we've been talking about.
Beautiful. Yes, and when you listen to YouTube, that phrase often comes up, and it really stuck with me, and I became really empowered that I needed to have a really strong name for a podcast, but I didn't want to change my Courting Your Soul podcast in order to do it because I have people who fit in that category.
Yeah.
But I wanted a name that was strong enough that people knew when they were being interviewed that this is what we're talking about, is the nature of consciousness and everything that goes along with that in order to help humanity to elevate or or waking down with themselves and just sort of get more in touch with themselves. And so the nature of consciousness is, I think, a very profound title that really tells people what the podcast is about and what they can expect to listen to. And with saying that, I mean, being in your company again, the enriching words and phrases and programs that you have that you share with people is just phenomenal. And I think that if we all did our part, I mean, you're doing it at such a grand level, but if we all do our part, we're going to help the whole human race because we are going into different times. And I think that if we had more people in the world like you two, that we get there much quicker.
Oh,
Thank you for saying so.
Thank
And
you,
we're
Rhonda.
committed to that vision and
Yeah,
more people like
very
you,
much.
same
Yes.
way.
Yes.
And I want to kind of add to what I was just talking about there a little bit in the context of speaking about our world. What is discovered as the nature of consciousness is more and more profoundly explored is that there's no longer a fundamental dividing line between consciousness and physical and psychic objects of consciousness,
Yes.
between spirit and flesh, between God and nature. We talk about a spirit matter split that gets it. I have a book called Healing the Spirit Matter Split, but it's kind of a joke because what happens is it's not so much that an actual split is healed as that we discover there was no fundamental split to begin with. And so, more and more, we see the divinity of this world. And we don't assume that the real action is going on somewhere else, the higher planes or wherever. And these bodies, these temporary lives, become no less divine simply because they're ephemeral and changing. But we become more and more committed to making the world a better place to be and making ourselves better companions to one another.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And we welcome as many people as possible to explore with us. Our website, samuelandlinda.com, and check out some of our offerings and the books and the CDs and all of the and the Maximizing Joy course and all of these things that people have access to. And yeah, we just really want to connect as much as we can with beautiful individuals so that they can continue, because everyone is doing their part and giving their gifts in their own unique ways. But we want to help them fall even more fully into themselves so that they can really, speed it up perhaps, or enlighten it to as many people as possible.
Yes.
And you are doing that with your podcast, by the way. And you're
That's
right.
what I feel.
Yes. And thank you for that so much, for your service and your heart and your being and the interviews that you do so beautifully, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, I've been kind of grinning through this whole conversation because it's just such a pleasure to be with you, Rhonda.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The information that you share will be life-changing to some people because all they have to hear and all I have had to hear was just a little something that just made a switch with me and made another switch, made another switch. There's sometimes you're not ready to hear everything, but if you
Yes.
just keep on hearing those little tokens of who you really are and why you've really come here, I think the whole world would change.
Yes.
Yep. So
Thank
be
you.
that.
I love that vision. Yes,
Yes.
yes. So
I
be
love
that.
that vision. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure to see you, and your energy together is just extraordinary. And the way you're able to just talk back and forth and share so much has been another incredible experience for me.
Oh,
So
thank you,
thank you so
Rhonda.
much.
We send you
Thank
so
you.
much love and blessings. And we want to say to everyone listening, blessings on your journey, no matter where it leads you. May you find more heart and more love and more ability to give your gifts in the world. So be it.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and being part of the journey with Nature of Consciousness, your host, Rhonda Grant. Theme song is composed and performed by John Park Wheeler.